Number 3 on my list is possibly my favourite video game of all time, Resident Evil 2. And before you ask, yes, I am very excited about the remake that at time of filming is due out the beginning of next year. Well, I was right to be excited. If you know me IRL or have been around on this channel for long enough, you'll know that my love for Resident Evil runs deep. Very deep.
Whoa, what's this? Copy of Resident Evil Survivor 2. What a game.
My favourite game in the series is unsurprisingly Resident Evil 2. And my least favourite in the series is Resident Evil 6. It's the Outbreak Files. Resident Evil 6 might be a bad game, and it might character assassinate some of the series' best loved characters.
Wait a minute. Ada's a clone? Oh yeah, sorry. Spoilers by the way.
But Resident Evil 6 at least functions as a game. If you boil it down to just the gameplay, it isn't actually that bad. I mean, okay, it was a little bit silly to try and mash up classic survival horror, action cover-based shooting, and whatever it is we're classing Jake and Sherry's section as. But the Outbreak Files just don't function as single-player games. Now, I understand that apparently in Japan, and I think in North America as well, the online capability was much better for the PlayStation 2, and so these games were actually much better received. But as single-player experiences, these games just don't work. Your fellow survivors' AI is ridiculous and ends up getting themselves killed most of the time. Not to mention they end up moving mission-critical items around the map, meaning you're more likely to kill your fellow survivors yourself. But where are my manners? We're here to talk about the 2019 Resident Evil 2 remake. I don't think I've ever been so excited or hyped for a game's release, ever. I was so excited about this that 8 months ago I arranged with an old school friend of mine that we would get together on the game's release weekend and play it together like we did back in 1998 when the original was released.
The long and the short of it is, the remake is good. Very good. If you're an old school fan like me, you'll love seeing the Raccoon City Police Department done up and looking better than ever, and at the same time keeping a very 1998 aesthetic. Just look at that laptop. Character models and voice acting are far, far better.
Zombie-like
Jill sandwich
creatures.
It feels as though the people that made this remake had a real love for the original, but at the same time wanted to breathe new life into the game for its new audience. There is enough Resident Evil 2 in this remake for both new fans and old school fans alike. Puzzles have been tweaked, so fans of the original will have to pay attention, and yet at the same time they're fun and engaging for new players. Locations have been reimagined, but if you know what you're looking at, you can see the old locations in them, and the story has been streamlined to give you a more action-packed feel, yet they still manage to keep you on the edge of your seat and on the hunt for more ammunition.
However, I don't think it's a perfect remake. Don't get me wrong, it is an amazing game, and I'm happy to say that there's a good chance it's going to end up in the games I play at least once a year. But it'll never replace the original. But after playing it, and playing it hard, there are a few things that stuck out.
The first thing is the same thing that a lot, if not all, of the mainstream reviews have pointed out, that the A and the B scenarios are pretty much identical, and lack the feeling that you're playing the other half of a brilliant narrative. With the exception of when you meet and play as Ada Wong as Leon, or Sherry Birkin as Claire, until the very end of the final act of Scenario B, plot and the puzzles are in the same locations as they were when you played Scenario A. For old school fans, I think this came as a little bit of a letdown. My second problem is an issue that every Resident Evil game since Resident Evil 3 and its departure from the original PlayStation has had, and that is character aesthetic development. And sadly, Claire Redfield has been hit by this the worst. In Resident Evil 2 she looked like this, and this. In Resident Evil Code Veronica she looked like this, and this. In Resident Evil Revelations 2 she looked like this, and now she looks like this. Did the character artist ever look at anything other than the fact she wears a red jacket?
As a side note, there is another thing I noticed in the Resident Evil 2 remake. You can unlock the classic Resident Evil 2 costumes. This is not Claire Redfield's classic costume. This is. Where have her sleeves gone?
With the Resident Evil 2 remake, now sadly Leon has joined Claire from looking like this in the original, to this in Resident Evil 4, to this in Resident Evil 6, and now to this in the remake. It is a small gripe, but it's something that's always bugged me about the Resident Evil series.
However, my biggest problem with the game is something that I've not seen a lot, if any, reviewers mention, and I think it is in some way linked to the criticism of the A and the B scenario being too similar. And that is, the relationship between Leon and Claire.
A friend of mine pointed out as he watched me play through the opening parts of the remake that when Leon and Claire are separated and Leon gets to the police station and meets Marvin Branner, he doesn't mention Claire once, or even seem that bothered about finding her. In the original this happens also, but back then Leon's interaction with Marvin was much shorter, and you could take the viewpoint that he didn't get time to bring her up. In the remake, Leon has time to have a complete costume change and never brings up Claire whilst talking to Marvin. When Leon and Claire are reunited at the police station, it's such a short interaction there really isn't any time for character development. For some reason the remake forgoes the meeting between Leon and Claire in the STARS office, and I feel this is the game's massive misstep. With that one meeting early in the game, you get the sense that Leon and Claire are in this together. Leon tells Claire about her brother Chris, he gives her a radio to keep in contact, and they do just that at various points later in the game. Finally, they form a plan of action, and that is to search for survivors, so you know they're going to be apart from this point on, and get out of the city. In the remake, they are reunited outside the police station in a somewhat short interaction. Claire is none the wiser about her brother throughout the entire game, if you're playing the canon route of Leon A and Claire B scenarios, and they don't communicate until the very end of the game, to which they seem far too pally with each other to say that their entire interactions up to that point have amounted to a car journey, a brief meeting in the rain, and a train ride. The train ride itself in Leon's A scenario disappointed me because he has no way of knowing that Claire is on that train. In the original, at least the FMV cutscene, we see Claire calling Leon as he runs to catch the train. It feels like the remake has missed the mark on the fact that Resident Evil 2 is the story of two people trying to escape the city, and not one interchangeable protagonist trying to escape the city. This may in some part explain why the A and the B scenarios in the remake are far too similar. Almost like the development team didn't really understand why there had to be an A and B scenario and just stuck it in there because people would be expecting it. But as I said at the start of this video, it really does feel as though the remake has been lovingly made by fans of the series. So why this shortfall?
The truth is, we'll probably never know. My personal feelings would be that it has something to do with development time and deadlines. But it doesn't stop the Resident Evil 2 remake being an absolutely fantastic game. Easily one of the best games I've played this year, 2019, and last year, 2018, and also one of the best Resident Evil games we've seen in some time. Well done, Capcom. Now don't fuck up Devil May Cry 5. Did you know the original Resident Evil 2 turned 20 last year? Did a video about it if you want to check it out, just up there. If you like this video, please be sure to show your appreciation by hitting the old like button and checking me out on other social medias. If you want to see more of this mush, why not check out the rest of my channel and consider subscribing. And finally, if you're seeing this, thanks very much for making it to the end of the video. Your continued support means the world to me.